let people understand what the black box is. It's a process of optimizing the design process. Is it something to do with getting rid of predetermined assumptions and moving towards the other players in the design process, towards a common vision? And is it also your way, as a relatively small practice, to have a global presence, but one that also has a local pertinence?
Yes. The black box initiation was like, and I'm sure you think automatically black box means catastrophe when this is the artifact that you collect when a plane crashed, because it records everything. My black box does record everything and listens to everything, but it's also influenced by my time with, as you named, Marvin Minsky at MIT, when Marvin Minsky was giving himself 20 years to, it was in the 80s, late 70s, 20 years to give the equation of thinking. So there was the artificial intelligence, and the principle of Lisp, which was the language that I learned then, was that you could provide with a set of statements that were true into a set of conditions that were possible, a logical process where you have a unique solution. So I love that notion, even though the equation of thinking is not delivered yet, but there's a thinking process that means you bring complexity to make it simple. So these diagrams that I'm showing here, on the one hand, is an analytical process that everybody uses today. We have machines, we have a thinking device, artifacts, but it's very tempting to build what comes out of it. So the black box is just to have an agreed vision of a perception that something is there. Then you can develop into a process. Then why don't we value even more the space where people are rather than the object? So, of course, to have a void, you need a mass. I'm going to talk about the mass, but because you need a building. To get a perception of light, you need a wall. So, okay, I'm going to talk about walls. But in between, there may be something that I think I would like to develop today, more than just the floor plates, more than just like the historical references to where I'm working, but just to set up elements where there's going to be resonance, and vibration into a given offer. The idea of the black box then, once because I also grew up professionally in an environment where a lot of people were there to be chef, to be designers, to say what they had to say, and realized that most of the process in a big office with many talents is sometimes, first it's a male profession, as you realize. The architects mostly are male. It's changing, but okay. If you look at, if you go to MIPIM next week, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. Then
there are more developers
and
there than
yes, also, and probably part of the problem. But then you are in an environment where the one that speaks louder or bangs on the table better will have the last word. So that black box was, I was in this environment where I decided to say, how else can we disengage the ego, create in a way an echo chamber where actually everything starts to resonate and you are becoming all actors of potential definition of a vision that everybody sees to be the same. So I put this glass, you have different people. Put the glass on the table, you see a glass. And now maybe there's forms that are not there, that we need to share commonly to become visible. As you close the eyes and you start to guess. And instead of saying I, you just say the object. And that was the call to say, actually, if we go further than an office, in society, you have the social dimension, you have an economical dimension, and you have the environmental dimension.
Because traditionally in architecture, the end users scarcely been consulted, and if they are, then even now, there's lip service played to them. But I think now with the internet and blogging and crowdsourcing and so on, developers, public or private, you know, they ignore the wishes of the end users at their peril. So I'd love to know to what extent, how you've brought in the actual end users' wishes in each of your projects, because you're working in the Middle East as well. You're working in cultures where, I mean, here in the UK, we don't have one process of public consultation. I think things vary from context to context, don't they?
It is complex, and this is kind of a cloud. And that
shows exactly how complex it is.
It is complex, and it's a cloud actually that, you know, amongst all different cultures, London is the best equipped to deal with the complexity of point of views. When I've never been in, I think it's specific to London now, maybe elsewhere, but walking from Chicago back then into meetings in London with a client and the consultants, and the number, even in Paddington, when I've done the project, the number of consultants you have in a room is like phenomenal. So that means like there's this evaluation of diversity, complexity of point of views, and also evaluation of the risk that a process of doing a building has to go through. All right. So the multiplicity of consultants could be good, it could be bad, but sometimes the ego goes back, and then, you know, an agent can say, you know, this sucks, and you cannot do that. So this is a complexity, but if we agree into a public or a group of people working together, that there are factors that we're all trying to achieve, and then you then ask the design team to act under what I call my vectors, design vectors. And if you agree that the process is not going to be linear, but it's going to influence each other on different key aspects of what you need to deliver. Like urban articulation is very important to me. The flow plate, the end users have to really get the best benefit of it, whether it's office, museums, or residential. It's got to be efficient and serves a purpose. It's a program. And then the environmental, working with nature is key. So this process gives you a vision under which everybody finds the DNA of what we're trying to do, produce something absolutely unique, and then tends to resolve the complexity in its seed of multiplicity but uniqueness of the answer. And you'll see how I'm going to go through a few projects.
You've got a project, Carpsack, that in particular pinpoints this involvement of the whole community.
That is actually the black box of Carpsack in a process that was like a 3 months.
Just explain for the audience, Carpsack is where?
Carpsack was like in Saudi Arabia with a few limited competition with very prestigious names. I don't know. We ended up being on a short list of 4, and there was only prescribed prices there. And we were well treated as contributors, as in competition, 3 months effort, and we had very little interaction with the client, so we had to reinvent the black box. We had to reinvent the social and the environmental, and we had the environmental consultants with us, but we had to invent an economical model and a cultural model. So this is kind of the process, but I'm going to jump a bit.
And all your Middle Eastern clients are totally wedded to sustainability these days. I think they call it Estidama in Abu Dhabi, don't they?
And Carpsack was actually, the purpose of the building was to do an institution to study alternative energy, everything but oil. So ironic, but okay, getting there.